I'm sure you've seen some of the more modern videos online where truckers will document their daily routines and provide tips for each other. Or maybe you haven't. But being as I'm on the younger side in this industry, every time I open TikTok or YouTube Shorts, that's all I see. I won't get into it, but I had to drop out of a pretty prestigious university for some personal reasons, and people always tell me I could have been more than a trucker. It's honestly not a bad gig, though. I've been making deliveries for north of 2 years. Obviously, the only strenuous part of the job is the long hours. You can never truly gauge how the isolation will affect you without experiencing it firsthand. My only advice would be to make peace with whatever demons might be lurking in your subconscious, because they'll definitely eat at your brain in the lonely hours. That's what happened to me, anyway. This happened to me 3 months after getting employed by my first company. I was basically as new in this trade as one could get. I was driving from southern New Jersey to Lafayette, Indiana, a 12-hour drive. 12 hours driving might not seem that crazy, but factor in the fact that I just completed an 8-hour trip, and that should put things into perspective. I wanted to get deliveries done as quickly as possible, so I opted to drive through the night. I'd get to Lafayette just before 3 a.m. Things were going smoothly. There were virtually no other cars on the road, so I was able to push the semi a little faster than normal. About halfway through the drive, I remember reaching down at the center console to chug a Red Bull, but there weren't any. Of course, I had forgotten to restock my truck after completing my previous delivery. After slapping my dashboard a few times, I groaned in frustration, knowing I'd have to stop somewhere. There was nothing I hated more than having to make stops during my drives. I might be unique in this, but I always get exponentially more tired when my vehicle is immobile, even if I'm only stopped for like 20 seconds. After glancing up at the navigation, I figured I had no choice. Either fall asleep on the road, or stop and get an energy drink. In my brain, those options were pretty much equivalent. Reluctantly, I pulled into the first service stop I saw. I had literally no clue where I was, probably somewhere in Ohio at this point. Too late, I realized this wasn't actually a service stop. It was what looked like an abandoned gas station and a repurposed convenience store. I'm not sure if there's any better way to describe it. Either way, it looked like there was another quick stop store not far up the road, so I figured I'd go there if anything. I parked the semi and made my way over to the first convenience store. To be completely honest, I was expecting one of two things to happen. Either the place would be open, or the door would be locked. You can imagine my surprise then, when the door swung open into a pitch-black store. I looked around, hoping maybe I'd get lucky and there would be a drink or snack left behind. Just before I was about to turn around, my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I picked up on a faint glow emanating from the corner of the room. I made my way over to it, and the glow turned out to be coming from a back room of some sort. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the door slowly. To my pleasant surprise, there was a plugged-in refrigerator against the wall. Eagerly, I opened the door, but found nothing. Literally nothing. The shelves had literally been removed, like the whole appliance had been gutted. As I was shutting the door, I was 90% certain I heard a clatter from the main room, like something hitting the floor. I froze for a good 10 seconds. Had I imagined it? There was no way. Quietly, I walked back into the main room and looked around. Nothing. Part of me wanted to keep investigating. I didn't have time for this, though. I walked out the entrance door and basically jogged to the other shop. It was open, thank God. I paid for my drink and made it back to my truck. Something about this whole stop felt wrong. I needed to get back on the road as soon as possible. I took one last glance at the abandoned store and noticed the door was now open. I was 100% positive I had shut it behind me. It wasn't my job to figure out what was going on here, though, so I started the engine and merged my semi back onto the highway. The caffeine started kicking in and snapped me out of my tired haze pretty quickly. My mind began to wander, and I started thinking about how bizarre that whole thing had actually been. I guess a squad or an abandoned building wasn't the strangest thing in the world, but my brain couldn't explain that refrigerator no matter what theory I thought of. I tried to forget about it and kept driving. It was then that I started noticing weird movements in the curtain behind me. Sweat started dripping down my forehead. I watched in the rearview mirror as the curtain seemed to billow and move, even though I didn't have the air on. I thought the worst. there was someone in my truck. I didn't have any weapons on me or anything, so I discreetly punched in the nearest police station on my phone. The drive there was the most tense and horrifying 20 minutes of my life. I kept imagining that person reaching out to grab me or trying to crash my truck. Finally, I approached the police station. I stopped the semi as close as I possibly could get and basically ran over to the police station. In seconds, my truck was surrounded by police, and after I opened the back, what I saw will stay with me for life. The police pulled out 3 homeless-looking people, 2 men and 1 woman. They were wearing rags and were wrapped in nasty-looking blankets. One of the men was armed with 2 switchblades. All 3 of them refused to talk, but stared menacingly at me as they were getting cuffed. I have no idea what they wanted. I don't think I'll ever know.